Hi everyone, welcome to the case studies session on economic issues brought to you by Sunya IAS in its ethics course. So some things to keep in mind for case studies on economic issues. Basically, please don't stick only to the economic aspect in such case studies because even though these would be on economic issues or economy related aspects, however, since this is being asked in the ethics paper, you have to use all angles possible which are given in the case study. It could be administrative angle, uh, like for instance, as an administrator, what do you have to do on such an economic issue? It could be a human resource angle, a technological angle, it could be an ethical angle, or even a social angle, or any other dimensions that you can think of. Do not use data or statistics or reports. This is not a general studies 3 paper or any of the other general studies papers. It is a case study based on an economic issue, but it is being asked in the ethics paper, right? So don't quote facts, data, and statistics. This is only for GS paper 4, only for the ethics paper, and not for any other GS papers. The case study will be on how economic issues impact different sections of the population and not how the economic phenomena happen, or it's not about the cause and effects of the economic concept which are involved. So please do not discuss about the technical aspects. This is only about how these economic issues impact different people, right? So moving to our first case study, this is question 3 of your 2020 ethics paper in section B. Rampura, a remote district, is inhabited by a tribal population. So the district is remote, which means that there is very less connectivity. It is inhabited by a tribal population, is marked by extreme backwardness and abject poverty. Agriculture is the mainstay of the local population, though it is primarily subsistence due to the very small land holdings. So even though they are practicing agriculture, the operations are not very remunerative because of the very small land holdings that people have, and this does not generate enough revenue. There is insignificant industrial or mining activity, so other avenues of employment are also not there. Even the targeted welfare programs have inadequately benefited the tribal population. The government schemes which are started for this particular tribal population has not benefited them much. In this restrictive scenario, the youth has begun to migrate to other states to supplement the family income. So there is out migration of the young people. Plight of minor girls is that their parents are persuaded by labor contractors to send them to work in the BT cotton farms of a nearby state. So the minor girls are sent to work in BT cotton farms. So there is this issue of child labor, and this is being abetted by labor contractors and the cotton farm owners. The soft fingers of the minor girls are well suited for plucking the cotton. So this is the reason why they are being picked up. The inadequate living and working conditions in these farms have caused serious health issues for the minor girls. So even though they are going and working there, they are not comfortable. They are facing health issues because the working conditions and the living conditions are not good in these cotton farms. NGOs in the districts of domicile and the cotton farms appear to be compromised and have not effectively espoused the twin issues of child labor and development of the area. So even the NGOs in both the districts are hand in glove with the cotton farm owners and the labor contractors and are not doing much to highlight this issue or to make this area developed, right? You are appointed as the district collector of Rampura. Identify the ethical issues involved. So that is the first part. You have to identify ethical issues. And please remember that you are the district collector of Rampura. So your solutions are going to be in accordance with your position. Which specific steps will you take to ameliorate the conditions of minor girls of your district? So this is another part of the question, steps to improve the conditions of minor girls. And the third part of the question is, and to improve the overall economic scenario in the district. So this question is of 20 marks, and there are three subparts which have been asked: ethical issues, steps to improve the conditions of minor girls, and steps to improve the overall economic scenario in the district, right? So you can equally divide your answer among these three subparts. Moving on. So the analysis is that I am the district collector of Rampura. I have to think like a district collector. Rampura is a remote district. As I've already mentioned, it has a tribal population. There's a lot of backwardness and poverty. They do not have access to a lot of resources or money, right? Agriculture is the mainstay of the local population. They are mainly dependent on agriculture, but it is primarily subsistence agriculture. That is, they are barely surviving on it. And the main reason is very small land holdings, which does not give enough scale to make the operations profitable. Next, there is insignificant industrial or mining activity. Targeted welfare programs have not adequately benefited the tribal population, and youth are migrating to supplement the family income, right? So the main cause of why youth are migrating is they want to send some money back so that their family survives. Plight of minor girls. Parents are persuaded by labor contractors to send them to work in BT cotton farms of a nearby state. So minor girls are being sent to nearby states. So there will be a psychological impact on the minor girls of staying away from their parents and not in a protected environment. They are being pushed into the workforce, and being in a workforce, you are held accountable for your work, and the working conditions are not fine, right? So these girls are going through a lot at such a tender young age. Their soft fingers are suited for plucking the cotton, and inadequate living and working conditions in farms have already caused serious health issues. They have not even become adults and they are already suffering from health issues, right? Which means that the cotton farm owners are not taking their employees' welfare seriously. Then NGOs appear to be compromised and have not effectively espoused child labor and development, right? So they're not doing much to highlight these two issues. Okay, so the first part of the question was, what are the ethical issues involved? So here, human development versus business interests. So in Rampura, development of the tribal population living in the area in terms of education, making them healthy, providing proper nutrition, providing proper sanitation facilities, health infrastructure, and livelihood opportunities in the district itself. This is in direct conflict with business interests. Businesses just want to hire the minor girls from the area to work in the BT cotton farms, right? So they don't want development of the tribal population, because if that happens, then their source of hiring minor girls will be exhausted, right? Then no one will be sending their minor girls to work in the BT cotton farms. So human development versus business interest, this is in contradiction with each other or conflict with each other. Then protection of childhood versus survival of family. So the minor girls are being sent to work in BT cotton farms in the other states because they are helping to supplement the family income, right? On the one hand, this is imperative to protect their childhood and invest in their health and education, right? On the other hand, the family needs their employment due to abject poverty, right? So again, the childhood of these girls are in conflict with survival of the family. Unless the family survives, how will they invest in the education and health of the girl children, right? Then preservation of nature versus development. Now, Rampura is a backward district with tribal population which relies on agriculture for living. But if we develop the area, if we bring medical and health infrastructure, education facilities, connectivity to the area, we might have to change their way of agriculture. So agriculture should also become mechanized so that it can become remunerative for them. Land holdings will need to be consolidated. So it will change their way of agriculture or introduce mining and industries, which again will be detrimental to the hitherto untouched environment, right? As of now, Rampura being a backward district, the environment or nature is pristine and untouched. But if we go towards development, then this will have to change. So, one ethical issue is preservation of nature versus development. Next is tribal way of life versus mainstreaming into the society. So the tribal way of life has the benefit of coexisting with nature, but it lacks in socio-economic development, right? So there's not much development, but it is very much good for existing with nature. But mainstreaming into the society improves the socio-economic conditions of the tribal population, but it also leads to change in their traditional customs and ways of living. That also has a psychological impact on the tribal population. Moving on, social responsibility versus profiteering. Inadequate living conditions are leading to health problems for the minor girls, but the BT cotton farm owners or the labor contractors are only interested in earning profits from child labor without providing them good working conditions, right? So this is social responsibility versus profiteering. Next, you have charitable objectives versus personal interests. The NGOs in the area which were set up or established or got their registration to perform charitable objectives are hand in glove with the labor contractors and the farm owners, and they have forgotten about their rationale of promoting development of the area and preventing child labor. So they might have some personal interest in colluding with the labor contractors and the farm owners, so they are not performing their primary function of preventing child labor and performing any social objectives for which they were actually formed. Moving on, steps to ameliorate the condition of minor girls, right? So uh, the first thing that you should do is, because child labor is illegal, it is extremely harmful for the minor girl children. So first thing I will do is collaborate with the district collector of the district in which cotton farms are located, right? The cotton farms are not in my jurisdiction. They are under the jurisdiction of the district collector in which district they are situated, right? So I will collaborate with him or her to stop the illegal practice of child labor in their farms. I will get the labor contractor as well as the cotton farm owners penalized for violation of these labor laws. So let them face the consequences of what they have been doing. The labor contractors have been persuading the naive families of minor girls to convince them to send them to work in the cotton farms, right? And the cotton farm owners are also profiteering from child labor. So first action is going to be this. Secondly, once the practice of child labor is stopped, we bring back the minor girls. So since they are suffering from serious health issues, I will first set up a health checkup camp, right, to find out if they are suffering from any problems and to take remedial measures to correct their health conditions, right? Thirdly, after they are a little healthy, I will initiate a nutrition and wellness program for the health of these girl children, where these girls will be provided with proper nutrition and medical support till they regain their health. For this, we can use all the government schemes like midday meal, Poshan Abhiyan, right? There are so many government schemes which can be used which are already in existence. Okay. After taking care of the health, then we also have to think of the future of these girls, because their parents do not have the financial capacity to educate them or to nudge them in the right direction or to look after them. So as a welfare state, we will initiate a targeted program for education of the girls at the primary and secondary school levels, which will also include vocational training, so that later on, once they become adults, they can take up some skill-based jobs, right? However, for the adolescent girls who are soon going to be adults, and the ones who are already, let's say, teenagers, and they will be adults in a few years, I will arrange for vocational skills training right now, so they can learn some things in the textile industry, or they can learn some skills which might help them get jobs along with basic literacy, financial literacy and reading, writing, arithmetic, and also help them in getting skill based employment along with distance education, so that they can finish school while working, right? So we can help them in getting the skill based employment. We can form a portal and find out any opportunities for them. MG Narega is one such area where such opportunities might be available, and then along with distance education, they can finish school while working. Alongside, I will focus on socio-economic development of Rampur, because that is the main issue or the main cause why this is the condition of the minor girls, so that families of these minor girls can get alternative avenues of employment. For instance, there is Ajivika Gramin Express Yojana, in which women were operating e-rickshaws and improving connectivity, forming self-help groups and cooperatives to reform subsistence agriculture. This can be used, and setting up small scale industries, right? So in the meantime, I will persuade them to invest in these girls well-being so that they can become contributing members of the society. So parallelly, I will try to introduce some socio-economic measures so that these other families will get adequate employment and they can also invest in the girls well-being, right? Moving on to the last part of the question, we have steps to improve the overall economic scenario, right? So the first step that should be is the existing targeted welfare programs are not working as intended. So first we'll find out why the targeted welfare programs did not benefit the tribal population. So we'll conduct an inquiry for that, and I will try to plug in any loopholes or any deficiencies in those programs. Next, I will work to reform the subsistence agriculture system. Their only source of livelihood is the subsistence agriculture system. So if we can reform that, they may be a little better off. So the reason is very small land holdings. So if they form cooperatives, they can consolidate the land holdings and pool in money for capital, technology and resources. So this will make farming more remunerative, right? In addition to this, I will facilitate women to form self-help groups to undertake skill development and vocational education initiatives. Okay, so women can be helped to form self-help groups and then they can undertake their own skill development initiatives. For instance, they can learn stitching or they can learn some other skills like weaving, which can be helpful in their future employment. So I will also work on improving connectivity to the region along with basic medical and educational facilities. As we have seen in the case study, the first sentence says that it is a remote area, extremely backward and has abject poverty. So one reason is that it is a remote area. There is no connectivity. So nothing is available over there, right? So that has to be improved, and medical and educational facilities also have to be built. Next, I will focus on the tribal culture, rituals and practices to see if their unique culture can be an opportunity for ecotourism with homestays in their villages. So, this is one of the options that can be used with minimal disturbance to the environment, right? So, this is a tribal population and they have unique cultures and practices, and a lot of people are interested in learning to know more about their cultures, right? So we can try and make this an ecotourism destination. This will help preserve the pristine environment of the region while forming a new source of revenue, right? Next, one of the most important things that you have to do is that these NGOs are not functioning as per their mandate, right? So you have to investigate into what they are doing. So since these NGOs appear to be compromised, I will get a thorough audit done under the relevant laws by the appropriate authorities. So there are laws which regulate the NGOs and there are authorities who are responsible to regulate NGOs. So this has to be done by them. This audit will be done by them to find out if there are any irregularities in their functioning. And if these are found, then they should be penalized. So next, after setting the NGOs operations properly, after checking them, then I will also facilitate these NGOs to collaborate and run vocational training courses and skill development initiatives so that the youth migrating to different states from Rampura can get better work opportunities. So the NGOs are a lot of help when it comes to socio-economic development of a region. So I will try to tap into that. I will also use the existing schemes to get the youth educated and enrolled in higher education through scholarships and NGO collaborations so that they can enter professions of their choice, right? So we can also get them enrolled in higher education. Finally, I will try to create a favorable ecosystem for setting up of small scale industries or mining activities as community led initiatives in which the community or the tribal population has a good voice to mention what they want and to voice their opinions in these activities, right? So here I have mentioned a few useful keywords for economic issues case studies. So we have discussed a lot of keywords already which help us in answering case studies. So most of the keywords are going to be overlapping henceforth. There is not much left to discuss in the keywords, but some keywords that I specifically wanted to highlight for economic issues are equity. So there's a difference between equality and equity. Equality is treating everyone alike no matter what their situation is, whereas equity is seeing the circumstances people are in or their needs, we treat them accordingly, right? So equity is a fairness. For instance, in a universal basic income, everyone gets the equal amount of money. So if there's a rich businessman, he's also getting the same amount of money, right? In equity, the rich businessman might not get any money, but the poorer people might get more amount of money so that they can survive, right? So this is equity. Tainted money, this is basically money earned through illegal means. Then you have universal basic income. I'm sure each one of us has read this in the GS syllabus. And socialist economy versus mixed economy versus capitalist economy. So sometimes we need to change the mode of operations in a particular sector. For instance, as we saw in the case study in Rampura, a completely capitalist economy is not working, is not helping in the development of the area at all. So there we need government support to begin setting up industries, right? So capitalist economy pattern is not working there. Then monetary and non-monetary incentives. So there are two kinds of incentives. One is monetary compensation, one is non-monetary. Non-monetary incentives can be rewards, recognition, appreciation. So NGOs, for instance, can be given recognition and appreciation for the good work that they do, right? So these are non-monetary incentives for them to perform. Externalities. Externalities are basically the impacts of any activity on some other activity for which it was not intended. So for instance, if there's a factory set up in a particular area, its main objective is to produce a particular good. However, one of the externalities involved might be the pollution that it is creating, or one externality can be the employment that it is generating. So this is just a byproduct of the main operation of producing a product, and it is not the main objective of that particular factory. Then sustainable development. Sustainable development is basically a kind of development which can be sustained for the longer term. Then you have inclusive growth. So growth which is inclusive, which includes all sections of the society. Corporate greed versus corporate responsibility. So corporates are basically into their field of business to earn profits. However, they can be driven by greed, but they also have a lot of social responsibility to cater to, as you might have read about corporate social responsibility laws, right? So this is something that you can use. Then there's cost benefit ratio. So basically, whatever business activity is going to happen, you have to see the cost benefit ratio in that particular business activity. What are the costs involved? Fixed cost, variable cost, environmental cost, social cost, and what are the benefits that are being generated, right? Benefits can be in the form of profits, in the form of development of a particular area, infrastructure being set up. So you can compare the two to decide and take a final call. Long-term costs and benefits. So there's a difference between short-term and long-term costs and benefits. Short terms just focus on 2-3 years, and they just focus on the immediate benefits and rewards, and they do not take into account the long-term costs like degradation of the environment, or displacement of a vulnerable population, right? So long-term costs and benefits also should be taken into account for good decision making. Base erosion and profit shifting. Basically, these are measures by companies to avoid paying tax in a particular jurisdiction or in a high tax jurisdiction. What they do is they shift their profits through a series of financial transactions to low tax jurisdictions, right? Then you have money laundering. Money laundering is basically trying to convert black money into white money, and this is done by a series of transactions. Then you have layering. Layering again is involved in tax avoidance and tax evasion strategies. So you have tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. I suggest that you understand these three terms properly. Tax planning is legal, and this is done by companies or any other persons to plan their operations in a manner that it leads to the minimum amount of tax to be paid. So they can take their exemptions and deductions and whatever incentives or subsidies are being provided by the government so that their tax incidence is minimal. Tax avoidance is active avoidance of tax. So you plan operations just to avoid tax. So the difference between the first and the second is that tax planning is legal. So you try to do it only when it fits into your business operations, and you don't change your business operations or mode of functioning just to save tax. In tax avoidance, you're actually changing your mode of functioning or your business operations to save tax, right? So tax avoidance is a little unethical. Then tax evasion is blatantly unethical. Tax evasion is not paying tax at all and not showing your sales in your books of accounts, taking cash only so that you don't have to pay tax on them, right? So tax evasion is completely illegal and immoral. Moving on. So this is our case study number 2. Rajesh Kumar is a senior public servant with a reputation of honesty and forthrightness, currently posted in the finance ministry as the head of the budget division. So his department is presently busy in organizing the budgetary support to the states, 4 of which are due to go to the polls within the financial year. So this year's annual budget had allotted 78,300 crores for National Housing Scheme, a centrally sponsored social housing scheme for the weaker sections of the society. 775 crores have been drawn for NHS till June, right? So the Ministry of Commerce had long been pursuing a case for setting up a special economic zone in a southern state to boost exports. After 2 years of detailed discussions between the centre and state, the Union Cabinet approved the project in August. The process was initiated to acquire the necessary land. 18 months ago, a leading public sector unit had projected the need for setting up a large natural gas processing plant in a northern state for the regional gas grid. The required land is already in possession of the PSU. So this case study is a little long. So Rajesh Kumar is a senior public servant. He is honest and he is posted in finance ministry as head of the budget division. Now his department is working on providing budgetary support to states, right? 4 of these states are going for elections in this financial year. Then the annual budget had allotted 78,300 crores to a national housing scheme. So this is a housing scheme which will be usually for the underprivileged, and it is a centrally sponsored social housing scheme. So it is a centrally sponsored scheme sponsored by the central government. It is for the weaker sections of the society. Now 775 crores have been drawn for this project till June, right? Out of 78,300 crores, only 775 crores have been drawn. So elsewhere, this is a separate project, right? Ministry of Commerce is trying to set up a SEZ in a southern state to boost exports, right? So there were a lot of negotiations and Union Cabinet has approved the project in August. So, but they don't have land as of now, and the process to acquire it has been started, right? Then you have 18 months ago, this is the third project that we are talking about in this case study. 18 months ago, a leading public sector unit had projected the need for setting up a large natural gas processing plant in a northern state. So there's a regional gas grid which is being set up. So natural gas processing plant, northern state and regional gas grid. This is the third project that we are talking about. So the required land is already there with the PSU. So the gas grid is essential component of the national energy security strategy. It will lead to energy self-sufficiency. And there were 3 rounds of global bidding. The project was allotted to an MNC, which is a multinational corporation, Messrs. XYZ Hydrocarbons, right? So the first tranche of payment or the first installment to this MNC is scheduled to be made in December. So considering these two developmental projects, the Finance Ministry was asked for a timely allocation of an additional 6,000 crores for these two developmental projects. Now, it was decided to recommend reappropriation of this entire amount from the NHS allocation. So, reappropriation basically is to reallocate the amount from one particular project to a different project, right? So here we have decided that we'll take NHS allocation and send it to these two development projects. So the file was forwarded to Budget Department for their comments and further processing. So the Budget Department has to give their proper analysis. On studying the case file, Rajesh Kumar realized that this reappropriation may cause inordinate delay in the execution of NHS, a project much publicized in the rallies of senior politicians, right? So Rajesh Kumar has analyzed this and he has checked that this may cause a lot of delay in the execution of the national housing project, so which has been publicized in the rallies of senior politicians. Okay, so the elections are coming up and politicians are talking about this project. Correspondingly, non-availability of finances would cause financial loss in the SEZ and national embarrassment due to delayed payment in an international project. So if these funds are not diverted from the NHS project to the other two developmental projects, that is the SEZ and the international project of the gas grid, there will be financial loss in the SEZ and a default in the payment in an international project, right? So Rajesh Kumar has discussed this matter with his seniors and he has been conveyed that this is a politically sensitive situation and it needs to be processed immediately, right? So Rajesh Kumar has realized that diversion of funds from NHS could raise difficult questions for the government in Parliament. So discuss the following with reference to this case. So the first part is ethical issues involved in reappropriation of funds from a welfare project to the developmental projects. So there are ethical issues which are generated due to this. Then given the need for proper utilization of public funds, discuss the options available to Rajesh Kumar. So what are the options which are available and is resigning a worthy option? So there are two questions and in part B we have two subparts, right? So coming to the analysis, I am Rajesh Kumar. I am a senior public servant. I have a reputation of honesty and forthrightness. I am the head of the budget division in the finance ministry. As of now, we are organizing the budgetary support to the states, 4 of which are due to go to the polls within this financial year. So the National Housing Scheme is a centrally sponsored social housing scheme. It is for the weaker section of the population. Annual budget allocated was 78,300 crores. 775 crore rupees have been drawn for this till June, which means in this financial year, which started in April, uh, only 775 crores have been drawn till now, right? Ministry of Commerce has been pursuing setting up a special economic zone in a southern state to boost exports. This is one developmental project. Union Cabinet approved this project in August and the process to acquire necessary land has been initiated. 18 months ago, leading public sector unit projected the need for setting up a large natural gas processing plant in a northern state for regional gas grid. This is the second project, the gas grid. The required land is already in the possession of the PSU. So here there is no land acquisition, it is already there. The gas grid is an essential part of the national energy security strategy and global bidding has been done and this project has been allocated to Messrs XYZ Hydrocarbons, which is a multinational corporation, right? So the first tranche of payment is scheduled in December to this multinational for the gas grid. Now, Finance Ministry asked for an allocation of additional 6,000 crores for these two developmental projects, right? And this allocation had to be timely, otherwise there will be a financial loss. So we recommend reappropriation of this 6,000 rupees from NHS, and this thing was forwarded to Budget Department for further processing. Now, the senior public servant Rajesh Kumar has realized that reappropriation may cause inordinate delay in execution of NHS, which means there might be a lot of delays in the execution of National Housing Scheme. The project was much publicized in the rallies of senior politicians. Then there is non-availability of finances because of financial loss in the SEZ and national embarrassment due to delayed payment in an international project, right? So if we do not pay on time, there will be non-availability of finances. Seniors conveyed that this politically sensitive situation has to be processed immediately, and government could face difficult questions in the parliament. So now we move on to the solution. So coming to the ethical issues involved in reappropriation, on the one hand, there is social welfare objectives which are to be met by the National Housing Project. On the other hand, there are business interests involved in the special economic zone, because if the special economic zone gets set up, there will be ease of doing business and the businesses can find out new business export opportunities. And in the gas grid project, there is the issue of national energy security involved, which will lead to energy self-sufficiency for India, right? Then moving on, non-utilization or underutilization of funds earmarked for a specific purpose. Here the specific purpose is the NHS project. The funds are lying unutilized. Only 775 crores have been withdrawn till June for this particular purpose, right? And unless there are concrete plans of expenditure in the future near term, we might want to utilize this fund for a different purpose, which is the SEZ or the gas grid project, which are developmental projects, and for which if you do not provide money or funding immediately, it might lead to adverse consequences, right? The third dilemma involved here is political commitment versus administrative efficiency and effectiveness. So because four of the states are going to face elections this year, there has been talk about the National Housing Scheme project in rallies of senior politicians. And if we reappropriate the amount to the developmental projects, they might face uncomfortable questions in the parliament. This might lead to public furore, and the public will keep the politicians accountable for their social welfare, right? Then you have administrative efficiency and effectiveness. The main principle of decision making here is what is the most optimum utilization of funds, right? So since the funds are not being utilized as of now for NHS project, administrative efficiency and effectiveness might make us reappropriate these funds to the developmental projects which are required as of now, right? Which require funding for now, and if we do not provide the funding, it will lead to financial losses or national embarrassment or an impact on the credit rating of the country, right? Then inordinate delay in NHS. If we reappropriate the funds to the other developmental projects, there might be a lot of delay in the National Housing Scheme, which leads to postponement of the social welfare objectives being satisfied. So that is a concern versus financial loss in SEZ. If the funding is not provided to the special economic zone project, there will be financial losses which will lead to less ease of doing business, and which will show India as not a very professional country which does not serve its commitments, and um, that will reflect in less confidence of investors in India. versus national embarrassment due to default in international project of gas grid, where Messrs XYZ hydrocarbons have to be paid a particular amount for their services in December, and if we default on that particular payment, it might lead to adverse impact on credit ratings of India, plus decreasing investor confidence by MNCs. MNCs might not want to invest in India anymore, right? The final ethical dilemma is basic needs. Housing is a basic need for the weaker section of the society. So that is in conflict with economic growth through new export opportunities by setting up SEZ versus self-sufficiency, which is another important imperative. It is a national interest involved in national energy security, right? Moving on. So options available to Rajesh Kumar. Option number one is don't reappropriate funds allocated for NHS and let there be financial loss in SEZ and default of payment to Messrs XYZ hydrocarbons. Right. So here we are favoring the NHS project and not doing anything about the other two developmental projects as required by the political class. Right. So the merits here are there will be no political embarrassment and no difficulties faced in the parliament by the government, and no inordinate delays in the NHS project. The social welfare will be upheld, right? The demerits of this particular option are that there is going to be financial loss in SEZ, which means that business export opportunities will also be lost, and ease of doing business is affected by not sticking to the planned investments, right? In the international project, the international reputation of India will be affected due to default in payment to Messrs XYZ hydrocarbons, and there might be an adverse effect on the credit rating of the country. The gas grid project might get hampered as MNCs will be wary of investing in further infrastructure projects, right? One of the other demerits here is that uh, in case there are no concrete plans of expenditure for the NHS project in this particular financial year, then it leads to underutilization of funds, right? The funds are lying, but we cannot use it for the purposes that they are required for, right? So this is another demerit. Moving on. Second option is reappropriate funds allocated for NHS to the other two developmental projects. Now here we are favoring the developmental projects. The merits here are that the national embarrassment and adverse impact on credit rating of the country will be avoided, and we will be honoring our commitment to Messrs XYZ hydrocarbons. Then the gas grid project will be on track, helping in securing future energy security for the country. The SEZ project will be on track, generating more business opportunities, right? And there's one more merit over here, that there will be a proper utilization of funds for now in the short term, right? Then demerits. There will be political embarrassment and difficult to answer questions in the parliament along with answering the public, right? The public furore will be there, and they will hold the ministers accountable, right? Then the second one is inordinate delay in the NHS project is detrimental to social welfare objectives. The amount has been allocated to the NHS project, keeping in mind the social welfare needs that are supposed to be met, and delay in this is not a good sign, right? Okay, so the third option is that we don't reallocate funds allotted to NHS, but find out other alternatives to meet the financial obligations of the XEZ project and the gas grid project. So we will find out other sources or avenues of finance that can be used to meet these projects' objectives, right? So the merits here are national embarrassment and adverse impact on credit rating of the country will be avoided in this case. Then the gas grid project will be on track, helping in securing future energy security for the country. And SEZ project will also be on track, and that will generate more business opportunities, export opportunities. There will be no political embarrassment, and social welfare objectives will be met, right? So if the question asked that which option you will choose, you could have chosen this particular option. However, the question does not ask this, so you do not need to mention that, or maybe if you do mention, just mention one line that you will be going with this particular option, because there are no demerits as such of this particular option other than uncertainty that the financial obligations might not be met using other alternatives, right? But since government of India has a good amount of money which is given by revenue, we might be able to work out certain financial arrangements to satisfy the financial obligations in the developmental projects, right? Now, the question also asks whether resigning is a worthy option. So, my opinion is that resigning is not a worthy option. See, you can never escape a particular situation just because you are in trouble and you are not able to decide or you are not able to work. If you do not have the capacity to do that particular duty or job, you have to work hard and acquire it, right? So resigning is not a worthy option. When I joined the civil services, I took an oath to carry out the duties of my office loyally, honestly, and with impartiality, right? So now that I have joined the civil services, I have to take this seriously. Resigning will just be an easy escape route in the short term. However, some other person will have to take the tough decisions that are required to be taken as the head of the budget division in the Ministry of Finance, right? So some other person, instead of me, if I resign, will have to take these decisions, right? So why can't that person be me? So I would weigh the pros and cons and consult the experts and take a well-reasoned decision. If I resign, I will forever suffer the crisis of conscience in my heart and the guilt of not doing my duty well. So here I have used the keyword crisis of conscience. So if I resign, I will always have this stinging guilt in my heart that I did not do my duty well and I took the escape route, the easy path, instead of trying to find out a proper solution, right? So I am giving you two practice case studies, which you should definitely attempt and send to the Sunya team for evaluation. In recent times, there has been an increased focus on the international arena to prevent base erosion and profit shifting. Numerous countries have undertaken lots of measures to tackle money laundering, black money generation, and terrorist financing. So this particular case study is about general awareness, general knowledge, or news items that you study in the newspaper. So it is very intricately linked to the GS paper 3 syllabus or topics, but you have to tackle the ethical dimension of it here. Even in India, a spate of laws have been passed to counter these problems, like the Benami Transactions Prohibition Amendment Act 2016. In view of the above, please answer the following questions. So remember here, I am not talking about the specifics of the acts or what is money laundering, what is black money generation, what is terrorist financing, how does that happen, what is base erosion and profit shifting, which are the international organizations which are dealing with these areas. I am not asking all these questions. The questions I am asking are the ethical aspects of these, right? So the first question is identify the stakeholders involved and their interest in the above issue. So who are the people who are being affected? Question number 2, what are the ethical dilemmas being faced? So what are the ethical issues in this particular topic? Then suggest institutional measures that India should take to resolve these issues. So you have to suggest measures which are institutional, which should be implemented on an institutional basis, and the measures should pertain to India, right? And these are not general or global measures. Then you are the district collector of a district where a number of companies indulge in tax evasion through money laundering using shell companies. So you are the district collector in a particular district where a lot of shell companies are being used. What steps would you take to prevent tax evasion and money laundering in your district, right? So this is the fourth question. Please try to answer this case study and send it to Shunya for evaluation. Now we come to practice case study 2. There has been a lot of debate about the implementation of universal basic income as a social security measure to provide a safety net to the people in times of distress instead of offering subsidies, ad hoc compensation and loan waivers, right? In view of the above, please answer the following questions. Again, this pertains to the issue of universal basic income, which was also discussed in the economic survey of one of the recent years. So you have to answer the following questions. Question number 1, who are the stakeholders in this situation and what are their interests, right? Question number 2, what are the ethical issues involved in such a proposal? And question number 3, if you are the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and you have to take a decision on the implementation of UBI, what would you do? So remember, here you are the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance. So you need to know first what are the powers and responsibilities available with the Secretary of a particular ministry, right? So you have to give your decision in accordance with that, because the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance is not the governor of RBI. So you can't take a very contradicting position, like you can't just superimpose the powers of a RBI governor on the Ministry of Finance, or let's say suggest such a solution which is not in the hands of the Ministry of Finance Secretary, right? You have to take a decision on the implementation of UBI. What would you do? Whether you should be implementing UBI or not. Here, they're not asking you whether you are in favor of implementation of UBI. The question is, as Secretary of Ministry of Finance, how will you take the decision, right? So please send in your responses, and the hint is that you have to act like the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance. Do not give your own opinion on it. How should the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance take decisions? That should be your line of thought while answering this particular question. So thank you so much, and I hope this particular case study session was useful for you. Thank you and all the very best.